This episode is brought to you by Istruzi Golf. All right, Coach, this data point from Istruzi applies to all of you. Golf facilities who offer lessons see a $2 increase in incremental spend per dollar of instruction. Keep listening to learn what I mean and how it applies to your coaching. I promise, it's pretty staggering.
It's not what you know, it's what you can prove.
You know how to cut to the core of me, Baxter. You're so wise. But like a miniature Buddha covered in hair.
I want to become a guru so girls will like me. Then I will like myself.
Now, before we do this, let's go over the ground rules. Rule number 1. No touching of the hair or face.
Of course.
And that's it! Now let's do this!
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Golf Guru Show. I'm your host, Jason Sutton, where I interview high performers in the teaching and coaching business, as well as all fields of study, break them down and get them to share their habits, coaching strategies, and success stories and failures that you can ultimately test out and apply to your teaching and your life. I'm trying out something a little different on this episode because this is a 2-for-1. Because the podcast just hit its 6-year anniversary, which is hard to believe, and has reached a milestone of over 300,000 downloads, also hard to believe. To celebrate and to thank all of you for supporting my labor of love in this podcast, I've put together a few segments of my favorite episodes in the early years of the show from some superstars that you may or may not have heard of that I wanted to share with all of you again or for the first time. I couldn't be more excited to share with you these combo episodes because my goal for you is to enjoy the big name superstars, but also introduce to you a few under the radar people that I consider high performers as well. These people who have transformed my life and have had a huge effect on my career, and I feel like they can do the same for you. You may have missed a few episodes over the years or have just recently found the pod. If that's the case, then welcome, or haven't dug back into the archives deep enough. So I'm happy to share these with you. So without further ado, please enjoy, and thanks so much for listening and all your support.
First up is George Gankas, a Golf Magazine Top 100 instructor based in Los Angeles. He coaches many PGA Tour players, including Matthew Wolff, Akshay Bhatia, and several others. This is the most downloaded episode in the show's history because he has built an incredible following through his social media presence. You can follow George on Instagram at George Gankas Golf.
Let's dig into your philosophy a little bit. I think it's interesting. I know you've got your own flair and you've got some different things that are different ideas. I would say that, as I always tell young coaches out there, is not to judge somebody else's philosophy until you really understand it. And I think as experts in the business, we all think we know everything, right? So it's always cool to learn some new stuff and different ways to explain it. So talk a little bit about how you developed your teaching philosophy and just what influences, I guess, sort of pushed you in that direction.
Well, first off, I would say that I don't have a philosophy. I try to use more of matchups. I know a lot of people think they know what I teach. Until they've been with me, they have no clue what I teach. So it is kind of cool that they see me do like some things that look really whacked. And I understand that. I mean, a lot of my exaggerations look different than other people. So, but you are seeing a lot of tour players start to use them. So
sure.
In general, where I come up with a lot of my stuff, it's just I stole it all from players, watching good players, and what I liked out of players. I like a lot of old school swings. I like Jamie Sadlowski's speed stuff, just how he's generated speed. I'm fascinated with people that are smaller, that aren't doing juice, that are actually creating a lot of speed, and why that's happening. That intrigues me for sure. But I really don't have a philosophy. I have principles that I follow. For instance, most of my players fall within certain categories of they all have setups that are very similar, right, where their balance points, armpits over the balls of the feet. And most of my players have their butt on their heels. And if you get a taller person, they got to get a little wider at times and round their upper back more than someone who's shorter. And if you aren't balanced within those parameters, there's certain things that are going to happen. A lot of people are going to actually early extend just because their armpits are on their toes. And the people who don't actually early extend and stay in it, like a DJ who's super talented. You're going to see his right knee do a stanky leg through the ball because he's holding up his balance. That's his, way to hold the balance. You're going to see, an Adam Scott with his armpits out and his toes and his head moves way back about 6-7 inches, and you're going to try and copy that. But that's not realistic. Those guys are phenomenal athletes, and you get little kids doing that, they're going to hump. But Adam Scott plays it off the hosel. You got all these matchups that are cool. So that's one parameter is setting up within certain areas. Number 2 that I teach most of my players is have a full turn relative to the length of the swing. That means if they're taking a half swing, there's a certain amount of rotation that I'd like to see. If not, you're going to see a lot of extension. You're going to see a lot of pull down. You're going to see a lot of push off trail, a lot of slide. Combination of all 4 of those things, you're going to see if you don't have a completed turn or enough depth. And those go hand in hand.
How much rotation do you like to see it? And I've watched a lot of your videos, obviously.
At P2, P3.
Yeah.
I mean, at P2, if you wanted to do a stock, I got kids that rotate like 70 degrees at P2, but I wouldn't say that's ideal.
Right.
I'd say that if you were going to look at a thing, it would be stupid for me to categorize it, but I know how much depth there is that if your hand path's moving out, you're going to do something to get it back inside. You're going to do something to reorganize the situation. And so if I had to put a number on it, I'd go 30-15 P2, first parallel, and I'd say about 60-30 P3, and then at least 90-45. But if you fall within that, I don't need a big old arm swing with very little turn, because you are going to do something to get it back inside. You are going to compensate. And if you don't, you're going to swipe the shit out of the ball. So that being said, that's another philosophy. And you'll see guys or players with enough depth, with enough turn, that will want to dig in the ground. If you get a player with no depth, they're going to be standing up and they're going to lose all their force with the ground. So there's no speed in that. So that's why we say you can eat the ball. But if you get like a Brooks Koepka and you tell him to do my leg work, I would ruin him.
Yeah, he's got a pretty vertical left arm, right?
Yeah.
Kind of laid off.
He has to slide. I'm not against sliding. I just don't set it up the way everybody else does.
Sure. If
I set things up, I can get down on the ground and dig in the ground. But if you don't set it up the way I do, my leg work doesn't work. You have to slide, or you're not going to move way off the ball and start squatting. So there's parameters that my players are within. And a third parameter would be if I like the head to stay pretty centered. And a lot of people, that's stupid, but within parameters. I love Stenson's early move off to P2 and then recenter. I like the way Tiger moved off and then recenter with some thoracic extension. That's not with your chest down without extension of your body and you pushing off trail leg to get back to center, because by the time you get to the ball, you're closed out. You don't have a chance to turn. You don't have any leverage with the ground. You're not gripping the ground. So if I see a player that moves off, they're going to push back. If I see a player that moves way off with their chest down and they squat, they're going to be stuck on their back foot. But that doesn't mean I don't promote a guy to move off, because I've seen too many guys successful doing it. It would be stupid for me to say that. That would be number 3. Number 4 is face. If face isn't ready to roll, you're going to slow down. You're not going to rotate through the ball. So I do like clubs or shafts that do shallow. I don't like it to be manipulated. I think if you turn enough in the backswing and you use the pivot the way I like it to be done, I think it happens naturally, assuming you're using the ground properly, assuming you're not pulling your arms down. But you can't even pull your arms down if you're leveraging the ground well enough. It's just there's no time. So I would say face is a big part of.
So you like
your face is ready to go.
Yeah, you like a stronger face, obviously at the top.
Not
or
so much.
You're talking about more
I'm
like 6
by P6. By P6.
Yeah.
I just like it to be square to backline, and that would be stupid for me to say to a little kid or someone that doesn't have speed, because they need height.
Right.
And so there's going to be more toe up, and they're going to be adding loft a little bit more. They're going to be jumping a little bit more to compensate for that, and that's fine. I mean, you can still get control. Yeah, as a preference.
For sure.
For sure, with the player with speed, I would say I'd rather have the face more on the square to the back, and I think old square is a bunch of BS, to be honest. Square to the form up top. Yeah, I mean, toe up, square to the form up top is nonsense. It is what it is, So I think that the trail arm has a lot to do with what the face is doing. You get a player at P2 that has their face square to the back line, and then your trail arm gets external. The face is still going to be open. I don't give a shit where it's at a P2.
Right,
it doesn't have relevance to P6. You're still going to have more flexion in order to get it or get a stronger grip, whatever you do. So that would be another principle that a lot of my players, besides that, I like a lot of golf swings. Yeah. I like a lot of them. I just try and match them up. And I think that a lot of people try and do the stuff that with legwork that I do, it's not going to work if they don't understand, how to match it up properly. Yeah. And that'll all be on my new membership, by the way. So it's not like people are lost. Where I did different categories of stuff, I'm sure a lot of people didn't like my stuff or thought it was hokey, because I wasn't there with them telling them, but my new stuff is going to be completely more self-explanatory for sure.
Yeah, I saw the new site. Looks really good.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
It took a long time.
I know, and because you're no longer GG Swing Tips, right? You're just George Gankas
No,
Golf.
I got the domain name.
Okay, you got it back. Okay.
But he has rights to it for 4 more years, and he's got some stuff that he's taken back to me, but I'm not affiliated with it at all. I'm not getting paid for any point did I have any kind of, we just actually set a deal. So I will be getting paid for some of the stuff so I can be honest about it. But in general, for the last year and a half, I had no affiliation with it at all. Gotcha. Nor am I on my part of it. So
yeah, I find it interesting looking at, and definitely going back to the setup stuff. And I was guilty, just like a lot of people back in the day, of trying to get everybody's rear ends out and back straight. And to look at what you're doing, I think it definitely makes good sense. Have you ever found, because I mean, we're all trying to get people not to hump it. You know what I mean? Like that's got to be one of the most difficult changes, especially.
To be honest.
Well, I mean,
if you change setup, it's the fastest way. And if you change face and you turn, there's no reason to stand up.
Well, some guys just have to, I think, just maybe based on flexibility or they can't separate. I mean, I'm talking more club players. I mean, I think you're teaching purely elite guys.
I'm teaching handicappers like you. No,
okay.
That's not true.
All right.
I'm teaching 30s, 20s. I got old, young. I got all kinds of, like during the day, I probably have 5 or 6 guys that are like legit 20, 30 handicappers, and I love it. It's fun.
Okay. So you're just set up.
Just because you can see me.
Yeah.
You can see me right now.
Yeah.
That what I do is I put the butt under the heels and I just say, hey, show me impact. Boom. And I'll take them from here and I'll say, just go and take a half shot, but I want you to turn at least 60 degrees from here. And then I want you to get your back and within a second, they're back. And then I'll actually get their face strong. Within 2 seconds, I'll do impact from butt under you and rounded from here and just do impact from here to here and it's done. And then all of a sudden, the only reason they're not is if they're armsy, they're always going to stand up if that's one of their problems. So it's 1-3 for club face, the setup, the butt's too far back, or the armpits are too far on the toes, or the face is freaking too open. There is nothing else. It's not flexibility. It's not anything. It's basically, if they don't have flexibility, you know how many times I've been told that a player is not flexible? As soon as I turn their femur bone, their right femur bone, or their trail femur bone, I should say, for lefties, and get their left leg to go in or adduct, and then teach them actually how to actually use their left bend and thoracic extension. There is no issues with rotation. It's funny how many guys you can get to turn. Yeah,
I love that because that's where we're very similar. For the listeners out there, who's basically just putting him into impact, bent right arm, like we do all the time, and having them hit a lot of little half shots. And I've seen you do that a lot with your players. And I think it's the best way to try to get them to feel like their butt stays back. If they can do it, it's just kind of. I tell them the stripe on their hip. It's not going to be on the actual. So I have a stripe on my hip right here. Yeah. So you can see. But if you look here, I tell them that's going to be on it, not their butt. So I tell them that's on their bone. That's all I have to tell them. They're like, well, my butt's not on. I'm like, yeah, your butt's not going to be on the wall. Gotcha. That's okay. Yeah, so get some more open. I try and keep it that simple. Yeah, I like it. Yeah, 100%. And then a lot of times I get guys that are super open with their hips, but their chest is closed. And I got to be careful what I say when I say hips open 45, chest open 30. That's just a reference. Sure. And you get someone like a Victor Hovland to get an open chest, or you get someone like Brooks Koepka, or someone who doesn't have a lot of depth in the backswing to get 30 degrees open with their chest, that's a bad matchup. You can tell Rory that because he's got deep arms coming down. The chest wants to be open 30 or even 40. No perfect number. It's just kind of a reference, but if a player has too much depth or not enough depth, and their right bend's going to be back behind, their chest is going to be square. And that's fine, but they better have that handle forward. Yeah, that usually means that face better be pretty shut. And you look at a Brooks Koepka shut, you look at a Victor Hovland shut. These are all the players that have a lot of secondary tilt because they don't have enough depth. Whether it comes from a slide or a push or a right bend that's turned not around, it's just back, or a left leg that extended with right bend with square shoulders is going to create a lot of secondary tilt, which means you're going to bottom out back unless you get the handle forward. So opening up for impact drills, I got to be careful on what you say. Yeah. So it's like you got to decide whether, like you said, if he's a world-class athlete, you're not going to give him arm depth like Brooks. But that's. Well, I will, but that wouldn't mess with somebody that's already established. You're correct. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I get it. So that was my next question: is like, what do you do? But if you do, and you decide to give them the depth, then all of a sudden they're dumped under. You better change their bottom. Right. You know what I mean? If you start giving them any kind of depth
or change their backswing and they still have the same bottom, they're going to be dumped under as ever. Those are things that you got to fix too.
Yeah, and that's where I like talking about your pivot. I like the late center. It seems to be, I guess, people, because we used to really keep people on their left side if you're in that stack and tilt or even some of the MORAD stuff. I like that the little bump, and then late center. Dana Dahlquist is big on that, as you know, and Scott Cowks. And you talked about Old Tiger, so you kind of see that. But I also like the way you get their upper bodies. As you start down, you get the upper bodies a little bit more on top as well, with less right side bend to keep them.
I don't mind right side bend though.
Well, not a lot though, it seems like, right? Yeah.
No, I have a lot of right side bend. I just have the left side of the pelvis low with right bend and front bend, which depending on where your actual, so let's say that I open up my chest real quick and I have front bend or my left side of my shoulder low, I'm going to be moving forward. But if I actually have my shoulders back 45, and I have front bend with right bend and lead side low, my head's going to be right pretty much on center. It just depends on how open I am with my chest. So some of my players used to try and get lead side low, like the left shoulder low, and that's a bad remedy. If your actual shoulders are wide open, you're going forward. But if your shoulders are not all the way open, that's a different story. But in general, yeah, I like right bend. I just don't like right bend, right lateral bend or right lateral flexion with the lead side of the pelvis high, then we got a disaster.
There you go. Yeah,
if I get somebody to go this way, I hate that.
Yes.
If I get that those are different because now the spine's going in two different ways. I like that. Lower spine going towards the target, upper spine going back.
Yeah, and you see that a lot with young kids, right? When they're trying to get more speed when they're tiny, they want to slide too much, arms get trapped behind them, and that seems like your leg.
That's why you got to pull them down. You got to pull them down because you're out of position. Something happened to where you have to pull them down. That's why when I talk or stack and tilt or say you have to pull down the arms and they start talking a bunch of stuff, I just laugh. I said, your pivot is so different. You are already moving forward. You have to pull your arms down. With the pivot that I teach and the position I have, you don't have to pull your arms down. The arms come down with your natural geometry of your shoulder. They do come down. They will come down. I'm not trying to leave them up, but I'm sure not trying to pull them down.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
If you're sliding, yes, they're going to get trapped behind you. Yes, they're going to get trapped behind your seam line. If you don't have any turn in the backswing and then you start sliding, yes, your arms are going to be trapped behind you. You do have to pull them down. I don't set my pivot up like a lot of people. I don't, and I never will. I mean, it's a huge power loss.
So what if you got somebody that has enough depth, with their arms in their hand path and they still come over it? Like, what's the first thing that you attack? Because is it the legs or the...
No, they're not turning in the backswing. Just because you have depth doesn't mean anything to me. It means, are you going to pull across a closed body on the way through like Tiger using with his irons and driver to go left for TrackMan numbers? Or are you trying to pull across a closed body in your backswing and get your arm trapped behind your seam line? I don't do that. I create depth with turn. And so if my players have enough depth, the only reason that they're going to be coming back up top is if their upper bodies move forward. They don't have any right bend. They're actually spinning everything at the same time over. They have no separation from upper to lower body.
There you go. Yeah, that was my question, is like, how do you get somebody
I don't open the chest up quick. It depends on the player.
Gotcha.
That's the problem is I like the chest open, but I don't like it to open up right away.
Sure.
There's always been separation in my players. The only one who really hasn't is Johnny, and he's always tried to hit cuts. And so there's a difference between all my players who like to see. And so I just don't even argue with people that think that I don't know what I'm doing when it comes to separation or that the arms get stuck. I just laugh. I'm like, you guys can keep believing what you want. Until you're with me, you'll never know.
That's right. I think the hardest thing, especially with the higher handicappers, is to get them to understand the separation between the shoulders and the torso, right? So you do like to keep the torso closed if necessary, if you need that little shallow move.
I think that if you get the lead side low, the right bend, and your you go more into flexion of the pelvis, or what most people are going to call front bend.
Right.
I think you could get yourself in big trouble if you don't have enough rotation in the backswing, or if you're not deep enough. That's going to throw you right over like Barkley. You look like Charles Barkley if you do that.
Yeah.
But the fact is, if you have enough depth, enough turn, and I think if your face is ready to go, I think that 100%, your actual arm's going to move really far back in front of you. That shaft is going to lay down. And I think that the lead side low with right bend and front bend will keep your back to the target by itself. I think that those really go hand in hand. I think a lot of times people lose depth because they bump their pelvis or they push their pelvis and they have a lot of right bend, and that just gets you narrow. That gets your left shoulder high. That gets your right arm real narrow, and people start trying to do depth drills, or they trying to get you wider, and it's like, no, fix your pivot. Your arm will stay wide by itself.
I like
you
it.
will shallow it by yourself.
Yeah.
So I just know that Dustin didn't try and shallow it. I know that Brooks Koepka didn't try and shallow it. I know that Matt Wolff never tried to shallow it. I know that so many guys, Johnny Ruiz, they came about on it by themselves with a good pivot. And so I just don't think that it's mandatory that no knock on anybody when I say this, because you can use your hands and arms all you want. I just think you're going to get tangled up at the bottom. I think that you're going to be stalled out at the bottom because you're going to be more concerned with a look up top, that at the bottom it's going to look like shit. And you're not going to have any face control, no compression, no speed, but you can make it look cool in transition. But that's not the way the golf swing works. Sorry.
Yeah, I know DJ's junior coach very well. And I've seen videos when he was a kid and he was always under big time.
Oh, yeah.
So now, he's...
We're talking about Alan?
No, about Kevin Britt.
Oh,
he was just before Alan, he was with Kevin Britt, and he was just talking. I was asking him, what did he look like when he was a kid? And he was always swinging too far to the right. So obviously his pivot now has really helped kind of get him where he can now cut it, obviously. Yeah. So I think it's a big part. And obviously the fitness and the being an exceptional athlete doesn't hurt.
No, absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about your players, because like we talked about Akshay a little bit. You got the number one junior in the world. Now you got Matt Wolff, the number one amateur in the world. And then you got, who else you working with? Danny Lee, Sung Kang.
Right now at the moment, I can say I've got about 10 guys in the tour that I really can't say. But right. Padraig Harrington right now, I am actually been hanging out with him the last couple weeks. God, I got so many guys that I just can't even say right now.
That's okay.
I have Parker McLaughlin right now that I can say on the tour. Who else can I say right now? I can say that I work with Bhavik Patel. Who else can I say on the tour right now? I can't really. It's pretty sad. But I can't say a lot of people that I am working with, unfortunately.
No, that's cool.
Just because it's one of those things where I just started working with them for some of them, and some of them want the respect that I don't tell who they're working with.
Sure, no problem.
But that's, as far as that, I've got a lot of guys coming up too, so it's going to be fun to watch.
Talk about Matty a little bit. I think it's kind of like I always said, Jim Furyk's dad was one of the best coaches probably that nobody ever heard about, because if you would have changed Jim Furyk's swing, you probably would have never heard of Jim Furyk. But Matty's got some odd. I love his golf swing. I sent you one of my kids that kind of swings just like him. I love the athleticism. So talk about the early days there when you first started working with him, and the decision not to change some of the stuff that maybe somebody would call unconventional.
You're the first one to say change not some of the stuff, when people think that it just was exactly the way it was when he was 12. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Because so as far as, how old was he? 13, whatever. He was a freshman, he was in 8th grade. So at his younger years, he was really dumped under. He was hitting sling hooks. So the first thing that I looked at is I love old swings. I love Bobby Jones. I like Sam Snead, certain parts of Hogan. There's a lot of players of older times that I like. And so when I saw his swing a little more crossed up, I love that. I knew it wasn't problems if there was a full turn and he actually used his pivot right. And he was really dumped under. He had a lot of slide and jump when he was younger and would just hit sling hooks. So we did a lot of stuff to get him more left with rotation.
Sure.
But in general, the first thing we did is got him more open, impact drills, as you see, that turned into his trigger.
Right, a little leg kick.
Some of that was for alignment, because as you know, the more we put pressure on the front footed address, that gets you more closed out. So he would actually try and get more open at address and do impact drills and try and get his neck out, eyes out, like a Duval or Annika.
Like DJ.
And now people DJ just recently started doing it. So now it's called a DJ too, which is funny.
Yeah.
So Stenson, you could say too.
Right.
But in general, I would say players like that are all trying to go left. So that's what we were trying to do for him, is he was very, very trapped out. And the mission was to just get him left, and how we did it, there's a lot of ways. When we first started, his grip was also probably one of the weakest grips I ever let stay.
Wow.
It was, if we had it straight to 90, his was less than straight up and down. It was probably even weaker, almost like a Corey Pavin putting grip, if you remember what that looked like.
Yeah.
So his left hand was like that, but he would add a lot of flexion in the downswing.
Right.
So he'd match it up, but not as much when he was a junior. It was kind of funny that his path was about 15 right when we started, and his face was anywhere from 6 to 8. But I told him, I said, we're going to get your path more left, and then you're going to start hitting blocks. So his path and face started matching up about 6, 7. Mm-hmm. Path, face were both about 6, 7. So he started hitting blocks. He's all, what is going on? And I said, now we can start moving your face, and we can start closing it. We can start closing it. And it was kind of funny that we started to close it more and more the more he started to go left. he started doing that pretty naturally with his left-hand flexion. I was going to change his grip, but he started to naturally do it. And it was funny, every time that I'd tell him to drop down at P6, his wrist would be cupped in extension. His face was wide open. And then I'd watch him swing it, and he'd actually bow it down himself. And I was like, all right, I don't even have to say anything.
Yeah.
Just keep going left. Just keep going left. So it was cool the way it worked. And what we did I left his arms up, put a lot of sticks on his arms, got his neck out, put sticks out in front of him to keep on top, taught him how to use like a push away, push towards, like you saw, a lot of different stuff to get him left. So, and then I let him keep his backswing because I loved it. I thought it was really, really normal, natural, and just instinctual. And that's where he's at. But more than anything, besides going left, we work ball patterns probably more than any coach has ever worked with the kid. I promise you that. We work tuck pins on a regular, back pins, front pins with numbers from, for instance, if he was hitting a 9-iron 170, his minimum was 150, and we go 170, 150, 165, 155, 160 from top to bottom with tuck pins. And he started getting so good at it. And we had a gridding system where if he was anywhere left of the pin, he'd get -2. If anywhere bail out right of the green, -1. On the right side, 0. Anywhere in the grid that he wanted to be in, just right of the pin, it was +1. And then he got +1 for the right number within 5 yards. Then we started to move it to 3-yard increments, 2-yard increments, only from 150 to 153 if it was a front pin, back pin. It was pretty exceptional what he was able to do. And then a lot of combine stuff. And so when he went to Oklahoma State, Bratton's like, I haven't seen a kid that is this prepared with flights. And I'm like, yeah, because the kid's different.
Yeah, he's definitely special. Yeah, and I know you're so underrated in that part of it, because I think I heard you in another interview talk about when you came up and first started coaching, you mostly were on that coaching side, right? You were taking guys out on the course. You were doing the games like that. So talk a little bit about that as you started teaching before you got into more biomechanics and more technique. Like, what are some of the things that you did with your players, and what did you learn from that?
I honestly miss doing that. It's because, like, no matter what, since I started, I took a surfer, made him a scratch in a year, and we just played every day when I didn't have a job. It's because we would play games. Just playing games on the course is what kids need to do. They don't need to be technical. They need to know how to control the curve, they need to stay as dumb as they can. And then once they get to a position where you can the best way for me to explain it, what I do personally is I try to kind of like trick them into movement. Okay. I don't try to explain mechanics to them as much as you think. I try and get them to either go left or right with certain things, like whether they're putting a stick out here or there. And if the kids are really smart and they want to know stuff, I'll throw them info. But in general, first off, when I first did it was I used to take kids behind trees on the right side of the fairway with trees on the right, and they'd have to cut around trees from 150 to like 200, and I'd pick a random number. Then I'd go from 100 to 150 on the next hole on the left side of the fairway. Then we'd go from 50 to 100 on another hole where it was left where there's tree. We go back and forth on the fairway the whole way. And so that really trained them to be playing games out of the trees. A lot of 2-ball, worst ball, a lot of up and down challenges, a lot of 30-yard and in challenges stuff, whether it was bump and runs, pitches, chips, flops. 30 to 70 was a huge category, which I have for my kids. I used to have games where they couldn't leap till they're 25 feet from a ball 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. And we'd have to do this because we didn't have the TrackMan stuff. So it was kind of fun.
Prior to TrackMan.
So 80 to 120, I'd mark a ball 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it was always one-on-one, one against another kid. And we'd do 120, I'd drop 110, 190, 80. 120 to 140 was 5-yard increments. And so 140 and in, my kids were sharp. And I think that really made a difference. And I always told them some BS. I always told them a 10% rule. And they're like, that's so hard. And I'm like, yeah, you need to be within 10%. And no one's 10%. But I would make them think that was normal. From 30 to 70, that's 3 feet for 30, obviously 4 feet for 40. But I didn't care about the numbers of that. I just wanted the average of all 5 balls from 30 to 70 would be 25 feet for 10%. And that's not realistic if my kids were doing it. And that's the program that I had for a long time. And then a lot of games on the driving range where there's tuck pins, a lot of really narrow fairways where they had to miss one way, putting a stick out in front, starting it right of it, and every ball started right and never started left of that stick, and every ball had to curve. Overhook, I didn't mind, but they had to start right. So it opened up the fairway for them, and it made them look and think that they could do things they couldn't. Stuff like that was really important for them, going through setup, learning to actually think right on the course. Asking them why they were afraid was really big. Asking why they played the game, which I could tell as soon as I asked them that question. I knew if they were going to be good or not. That was for sure. Any kid that said, I just play for fun, usually sucks. Any guy that says, I want to smash my friends, or I want to be the best player in the world, or I want to get chicks, or I want to make money, those are the kids usually that make money. But those are usually also the kids that want money, or chicks are the ones that usually struggle in tournaments because their ego's so on. So you find some, I'm sure you find the same thing.
Oh, yeah. I was going to ask you what some of the answers you get. How do you figure out?
It's hilarious.
What are some of the things you've heard with some of your kids? Because I think the kids in LA got to be a little different than North Carolina.
I can't even say the words they use, but they want girls, or they want money, or they want fame, or they want to be cool. I mean, it's hilarious. The things I'm like, well, then you have the fire now because that's what you want. Yeah. That's good to have that fire, but you're going to struggle in tournaments because you're already an ego-oriented kid for sure.
Gotcha.
Once you teach them to be okay with a lot of outcomes, they start to realize that things can be put in their order and not make such a big deal out of playing bad golf at times, because it's not the end of the world. It's not them as a person. It's really important for them to understand that they can't attach themselves as a person to what they shoot on the course. There's just going to be a constant improvement. And it's sometimes when you're working on stuff, you're going to get bad results, and that's fine.
Yeah.
You got to be okay with all the outcomes. And I think that a lot of kids that I work with are okay with the outcomes for a long, long time. They're okay with shanking it off the first tee. They're okay with looking stupid. They're okay with getting beat by their friends. They're okay with, pretty much all outcomes. Somebody banging out their girlfriend, they're okay with that. As soon as they're okay with it, it doesn't happen. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. How do you convince your kids that, though? I mean, you think that's something they're innate? Like, well, obviously, Matt Wolf.
First off,
just going back to like the kid that I showed you, the thing that you battle a little time sometimes is, everybody's going to tell them they need to change their swing, or everybody's going to tell them that that's not going to work. How do you hope that's going to motivate them?
Matt Wolf is okay with all outcomes.
Yeah,
Matt Wolf is okay.
Right.
But when I tell you that, you'll believe it when I tell you. Last year at Nationals, he calls me. He's like, I haven't been this nervous in a while. I'm like, what are you nervous about? He goes, wow, we got Nationals, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, so tell me your thoughts. He goes, well, I just want to win Freshman of the Year, and I want to win the National Championship. I said, how bad do you want it? He goes, are you okay with not getting it? And he goes, no. I said, then you ain't getting it. And he goes, and he started laughing. Well, that's right. You ain't getting it if you really want it that bad, and you're not okay with not getting it. And he goes, you're right. You told me 100 times I got to be okay with that. I am okay with not winning Freshman of the Year, and I am okay with playing bad. And he didn't obviously play bad, and he did get Freshman of the Year.
Because he's freed up now.
And he was freed up. And I'm not saying that was all me. I'm just saying in general, I put things in perspective for the kids that golf is not that important. Golf is always going to be a game, and golf is supposed to be fun. And we can't attach it to our identity. We'll lose our minds because golf is too cruel. It really is. It's an up and down battle. And especially when you try and improve, a lot of times you get worse. Unfortunately, maybe you hit it better, but sometimes I've got players who hit it better right off the bat, and they fly greens and make doubles, or they flush the ball and they're not prepared for it, and they make bad mistakes in the course, and then that's my fault. You know what I mean? Or your fault because you're the coach who's coaching them, and they shot 80. And that's just not fair because people don't know what behind the scenes is really going on. They don't know that, God, this guy just made a ball pattern change, and he's been needing it for 6 months because his wrist is messed up. And then he goes and shoots a big number, and it's the coach's fault. But it's our business is tough too. It's understanding personalities, what we can change, what we can't change. Those are some things, as you know really well, that are very, 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 very hard to actually predict at times and understand. I mean, that's what we are. We're psychologists too, psychiatrists.
There's no doubt. Yeah, I call that the EQ part of what we do. It's like how to coach them up when they don't have their best stuff, or how to get on them when they need it. It's like, how do you figure that out? I mean, that's one of the questions I was going to ask you is, I think as a top teacher, we need to develop the IQ and the EQ, the self-awareness, the empathy, the reading the body language. What do you feel like has contributed to you being good in both? I guess I like the EQ side, the answer, the EQ side, because we know the IQ. You've talked about, who you've learned from, and we'll get into the coaches here in a minute, but talk about the EQ side. Where did that come from? And is it more experience, do you think, or trial and error, or do you have some resources that you've gone to?
I just think that in general, when you look at a player and you know that they're suffering, or they're getting really cocky, or when they're way over their head, whatever it might be, I personally just know how I react best. I know that some kids love to be praised, and I know that some kids need to be beat down. I know that Wolf likes to be actually praised. He probably doesn't even know it, but I do. I know that some of my players like to be shit talked to. They like to get beat up physically, mentally. that helps them to actually go, I'm going to prove that I'm going to smash this kid, or I'm going to do this or that. And some kids are real fragile. So for me, I think I'm, as you probably are, I'd assume, being as good as you are at what you do, I'm very good at reading personalities.
Yes.
I can tell immediately if there's a CEO I'm teaching, I can tell in 1 second because they're trying to take control, and I just won't let them because I don't really care anymore. I'll just be straight up. If you're a CEO, you want to run this lesson, I'm just stealing your money. You might as well just give it to me now. I swear to God, I'll say that to them. I did it last week. The fact is that's not me being an asshole. I'm trying to help people. And if they want to be helped, let's do work. If not, you want to tell me what you're doing. But I'm pretty good at reading people's personalities. And sometimes I'm not appropriate on some things I say, but that's just who I am. I'm going to tell you the truth.
Right.
And I'm going to love you with all my heart if you're my boy. I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to get you better. I don't care who it is, but I can definitely tell if someone needs to be woke up and say, listen, it's time to make some changes. And I think we, as coaches, better know that, or we're going to lose players.
For sure.
You know?
Are there any
Absolutely
specific questions you like to ask, like a new student, that would extract that response or help you to read that player, or to direct you in the lesson, I guess?
I think the first thing that I do is I ask a player, what do they really want? What will be their ideal situation?
So their goal.
And sometimes, they'll tell me right away that, it's all mental for them, or they'll tell me that, I need help with contact, or my ball direction's bad, or I need more speed. They're always going to tell me what they want, or they want consistency. And I just say, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I said, what are you talking about? I mean, I don't even understand what that means.
I hate that word.
I asked you that how many times?
Yeah, all the time.
I want consistency. What does that mean? Okay.
Oh, no.
That's what I tell
Let's dig a little deeper. Yeah, like, dude, we got to be more specific than that.
Consistency in your contact, your ball flight. What do you mean? Do you want to be more consistent at scoring? I mean, so in general, the first thing that I do is I just ask them what they want, and if I can fulfill their needs, I think that's big. But in general, I think we're all pretty good at reading people, or we'd be saying things that probably are going to get us fired.
Yeah, exactly.
To be honest, I mean, when I look at a player like a tour player, a lot of times I'm really good at reading if they want info, or if they just want you to fix them, or they just want you to give them praise. I mean, that's pretty easy to figure out real quick.
Sure.
It's like some guys want a lot of information. Oh, that's too much. Or one thing at a time. Or, you know what I mean? You can't, everybody's different. And my favorite people to teach are coaches. They're the most fun for me because they're like taking notes and they're like stoked.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Where tour players are like, it's almost like babysitting.
Yeah.
It is. It's like, sometimes it's not even fun. I want to be honest with you. Don't mean that I don't love teaching tour players. I'm just saying that's probably the easiest job on the planet, is to teach a PGA Tour player. It's like you don't have to have skill as a coach to teach them. You just need to not pretty much mess them up. It's the truth.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah,
you either have a good horse or you don't. How's that sound?
Yeah, if you're a full swing teacher, you got to teach good putters.
Yeah.
And if you're a putting teacher, you got to teach good. Sometimes it can backfire on you, I guess. Expose your expertise. Yeah,
I guess if you have a good player, you're a good coach. I guess that's what that means.
Well, yeah, sometimes.
I think absolutely not. I think that's the weirdest thing that I've ever heard.
Right.
I think it's development of players from when they started. That's what I want to see. Who's developed players? That's the most interesting question.
Yeah, the common debate in teaching circles, which you can go to either side, is using that anatomical biomechanics language that we like to use, from teacher to teacher. I like the fact that you use the correct language in your lessons. How much do you have to explain to your students so they understand, or do you go for it and then sort of read their body language, or they're sometimes they say, I don't understand that, or do you how do you approach that? How do you feel about that?
I think that when I started doing what I do, I think a lot of people were puzzled. I think a lot of people come to me and have seen a lot of my stuff now, and so they're prepared for me.
Right.
But a lot of times they assume things, and they leave a lesson and go, shit, that was nothing like I thought. Absolutely nothing. Yeah. I thought you were just going to teach me to squat all day and you didn't say anything about the legs.
Right.
Or, oh my God, I thought you were going to teach me to shallow it, and it just shallow by itself. It's like they get mind boggled on the order I go. I think a lot of coaches get mind boggled on the order I go about teaching. A lesson is never the same. So they think I'm sure as you do, we all teach a different order. Sometimes I just get it gets stale and I do different things. I start out different. Sometimes I have one camera that I video and one that's always in the same position. And sometimes I'll start out with the down the line or the face on, and it guides the lesson in a whole different way. And that being said, I would say from using anatomical terms, that was not me at all. I'm not a biomechanics specialist. I do know the body very well. I was a wrestler. I do know just about every bone and anatomical term you could ever come up with. The problem is that I never wanted to teach that way. It was more of my boy Chris Como saying that, it'll open your eyes to a lot of different stuff.
Yeah.
And so that being said, Chris has been a good friend of mine for a long time. And he and I don't really teach. I don't even know what he teaches, to be honest. I just know that
he talks very quiet when he teaches, so nobody can hear.
I don't know what he teaches.
I've watched him a little bit.
I've never seen him teach, and I would consider him a really good friend.
Yeah,
and I've known him for over 20 years. And I know that he's had my back as I've got his back, wholeheartedness. And I think he's one of the smartest guys in the game. I don't think he gets credit for being one of the greatest coaches of all time.
100%.
And I think that a lot of people stole his stuff and don't give him credit. So that being said, he is a guy that if I ever had a question about anything with biomechanics or anything about ground force reaction, he'd be the first guy that I'd go to. But a lot of stuff I realized on my own as far as watching other players, experimenting, having number of people under my belt to teach every day. It becomes easier to figure things out when you got a new case study every day. It really does.
Yeah, no doubt.
I've been teaching for over 20 years. It's like, if I can't figure out somewhere I'm not constantly trying to learn, then I'm going to fall behind.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're getting a lot, and I've seen it on social media where guys are coming to watch you teach, young coaches coming to learn from you. Like, what advice would you give, like, say, a PGM student that wants to get into teaching, or just a young coach in general? What would you say is the blueprint nowadays? Because I think it's changed a lot since we were kids. We were reading books.
I would say the first blueprint was get an education on what's important, what's out there. Study a lot of different people. Don't believe one philosophy. Figure it out for yourself. I'd say, first off, I'd watch a lot of videos. I used to read a lot of books, watch a lot of players, watch a lot of good players, and figure out why that swing works. Don't just say that swing sucks. Figure out why these differences work pretty. Or some are really timing oriented, and some are optimal matchups. Like a DJ is an optimal matchup for himself or for someone with his speed, but it wouldn't be for a little kid that doesn't have speed. It would not be an optimal matchup. They'd never hold the green. So understand things like that for new coaches. I would say I would do a lot of studying videos. Speed, who players with a lot of speed. I'd say, honestly, as bad as this sounds, I would, I get my membership program, and I've never promoted my membership program. As stupid as that sounds. There's going to be education that I've learned over the last 30 years you can get for basically nothing. Otherwise, go watch top 100 coaches in the world. Just go and shadow them if you get the opportunity to. I would say that would be some real good advice. And to start your business out, I would give the best player in your area free lessons if you can, because that will always go a long way in starting a business out. I know I did that, and that went a long way. 20 years ago, I taught one of the best players in my area. His name was JT Kohut, and the word got spread that I was his coach, and that helped my business out. So that's some good advice for those of you out there who have the opportunity to help somebody out for free. That can help you out right away.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, and that's what I tell young coaches is if you're not getting to teach a lot, because like I said, there's no certification for experience. You got to get in there and get your hands dirty, whether you got to do it for free or not. I think it's way more important to see the big picture of like what that can lead to. And you're a perfect example.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Did you go through the program?
I did.
PGA program?
Yeah, I did the PGA program, the old program. When they had PGA business schools 1, 2, and 3, and you did write your thesis and do the whole presentation. It's a little bit different now, but yeah.
Was that hard back in the day for you, or was that easy?
It wasn't that hard. It was more, it was just you had to have enough time under a PGA pro as an assistant. Again, the stuff that I learned was all stuff that I went out and got. Like I went out and observed. I read books. I did courses online. I did, it was all dig it out of the dirt type of stuff, right? It's like you got to go and find it out. And you got to be hungry. Like the PGA, really, the teaching part of it was not great back then.
I think the kids now too, like the kid that came in and that works for you, I thought he was really smart. I think that he's had an education on seeing you teach. Yeah. Some other really good instructors teach. He's very aware of, what's out there.
Yeah,
and
that's
he was
a new
very
breed.
Curious.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, yeah,
be curious. And that's what I tell my guys. And like, get out there and get it. Because and both of my guys are PGM kids that have gotten an unbelievable education even before they got out into the teaching world, and now they're full-time teachers at 24. That didn't happen when I was 24.
No,
the opportunity wasn't there.
You're going to start seeing kids in the top 100 that are under 30 years old, and I don't see why not, except for the fact that I think these kids are a million times smarter than we were, but they're jumping in on is Mike Adams said to me when he said, you're going to be one of the top 100 guys. He said, what these kids nowadays are coming in on the, we got 10 floors. They're coming in on the like 5th floor.
Right.
Where we had to start from like the ground floor.
Exactly.
And he's right. I mean, it's interesting how advanced they get information now where we got stuff like don't turn your hips. You can get the X Factor. That's a good way to jump stall and try and do anything to slide. That's, or stick your butt back as hard as you can. And that's a good way to actually stall out too. It's a good way to actually early extend. All these things that we look back on now is straight back, restrict your hips. Those things pretty much killed golf, to be honest. They really did. They're the reasons that we've done a lot of things to compensate in the downswing and club face being toe up. I mean, these are some things that that people aren't responsible for saying these things, and we were all learning at the same time. I just think that we have more facts now. We have more science behind us.
Absolutely.
And I think that new generation's lucky. They
are very lucky. Yeah. I mean, I always tell coaches that, like, if you're teaching the same stuff you taught 10, 15 years ago, then you're not paying attention. Because, I mean, my stuff's changed dramatically just from the influences I've had, like you and, Scott Calx and all these other guys that are doing great research and experience stuff. And then, like, here's what's really happening. Chris Como, all these guys that are, digging in with some real facts, right? John Sinclair, the 3D stuff is phenomenal.
I think we're going to get better and better and better at what we all do. And I think that everybody thinks that we all have it all down. We don't.
No, we're still learning.
I think we're close. I think we're all close. I think that we're all functionable to where people say, well, what else is there? You have everything. I'm all, well, I don't think that's true. I think that in a year from now, I'll be a million times better than I was last year. I think in 2 years, the same. And they go, well, what's the difference? You can get anybody to hit a ball quick. And I'm all, well, that's true, but I think I can get people to hit it quicker. I think I can relay information better. I think that I can actually make them understand things quicker, hands-on quicker. I think everything's just going to get faster. It's not going to take as long for people to absorb our information. And I think that's the next step, is whether it's going to be to where we jump in a bodysuit and we get feels, or whether there's certain things technology wise that we're going to speed up the process, which, hopefully we do, rather than them having us make them feel it or see it, or their audio is going to be up as far as they're going to have to listen to us. I think it's going to get a lot quicker. I think that's the future of golf, is people aren't going to be grinding as hard, but they still have to learn how to think and how to play golf. We all have this kind of preconceived notion that we're going to hit it dead straight and hit it perfect and we're going to hit 18 greens. And I throw balls down from 20 feet. And I did it to Akshay when he played the Valspar. I said, I don't care if anybody hits 18 greens. It doesn't mean anything to me. I said, I can give you 18 20 footers and you're probably only going to shoot 300 max. And he goes, oh, that's full. So I threw him down and I said, and he shot 200 for 18 holes. And I'm like, exactly. Yeah. You hit all 18 greens from 20 feet. So I think everybody has that thing. I'm going to hit all 18 greens. I'm going to be so good. You're still going to have to learn how to play golf.
When you feel stressed out or say like overwhelmed, what do you do? Do you have any like go-tos, anything? Yeah, absolutely. I get very present very often. I'm always looking up and out. And so when I say present, just in the here and now pretty much. Do you meditate or do any kind of form of meditation? I don't meditate, but what I do is I always get out and look outside my yard or outside, and I look at the mountains near me. I look at the freeway, I listen for sounds, and I try and do that like when I remember, like every 5 minutes, and I try and stay present, because I think I do my best work when I'm in a present state. When I'm not thinking about what I'm trying to say is usually when I flow, and when I flow, a lot of good stuff comes. So I definitely, when things are going weird, I always ask myself, what's really bothering me? That's probably the best question I ask myself, and it's always my ego being damaged. And then I become okay with those outcomes. I become okay with someone saying something that was disrespectful. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with all those outcomes is usually when my mind clears out. And then I stay really present. I start looking at detail in trees. I look high. I look at the wind on the trees. Usually it is detail. If my eyes are blurry, then usually I'm in a state that I don't want to be in. Usually I'm in my head. That's a form of meditation. It's being present, having gratitude, right? I mean, it's just, like you said, kind of a lot of things. My mom meditated. Did she really? I've been dabbling. She meditated a lot. She tried to, but I never did. Transcendental or what's the right word? Yeah, transcendental. Yeah, just being. Transcendental, yeah. It's mindfulness. It's a common answer that we get. To do that, and I never did. Yeah, it's a common answer that you hear from high performers is they have some form of that to sort sort of keep them focused. I mean, you're just probably like me. Your mind gets busy and, you have trouble calming down and focusing, and things get a little hectic as busy as we are. So it's always interesting to ask that question.
So what do you do?
I mean, I've started to meditate. Typically, when I get overwhelmed, it's because I'm
time of the day in the morning when you wake.
I try to do it in the morning, yeah. Or sometimes it might even be in the middle of the day. If I've got 10 minutes, I'll just go and get away from everything and just sit and just breathe and pay attention. Like you said, just kind of pay attention to being more present. And typically when I get overwhelmed, it's because I've got too many things going on that probably I didn't prioritize properly. So usually I'll go and make a list and say, hey, what's really important? This is what's bugging you, because I'll worry about things until they get done. And most of the times they're mundane, right? So it's like I've got to figure out what's important and focus on that. And then I get calmed down. But I just get too many things going at one time, for sure.
Absolutely. I think we all do. I think especially if you're a coach and how many players we have.
Right. And I always remind myself that I asked for this. It's like you can't be mad because people are emailing you to try to get a lesson, or people are texting you for information, or, because I've asked to do what I'm doing and I love it. So it's like, don't complain because you're too busy. It's just stupid. And then I get just really thankful and grateful of everything that's been given to me and how things turned out. So it's like that. That's the question I usually say is like, you asked for this. If you get mad because, I was going to ask you, like, do you read all the comments on your YouTube channel, right? I mean, it's like, if you get mad about that and you'd be like, all right, why am I doing this? Right? Because you're sharing information. It's how you make a living.
I used to get a lot of people that would say nonsense on my Instagram on a regular, and sure. I think I look forward to it now. So when people talk trash, it's like I pretty much welcome it because it's kind of funny to me, but especially because people have never seen me in person or you in person, right. For someone to trash talk you without seeing you in person is ridiculous. So, or a preconceived notion that you teach a certain way is absolutely hilarious. So I think that's the funniest part about social media or YouTube, the YouTube part. I mean, I don't even have my YouTube channel. That's not owned by me. Okay. But as far as Instagram, I don't respond to nonsense. Usually people respond for me. It's kind of funny.
They come to your back, which is awesome. I've seen that.
Yeah, I try and stay off it.
I hear you.
It's kind of funny. If I respond to them, then they pretty much got me.
If you could have a gigantic billboard anywhere with anything on it, and you could get a message out to millions or billions of people with the message on that billboard, what would it be and why?
Wow, that's a great question. Damn, you put me on the spot. I would say golf related or not golf related?
It's up to you. You can do one of each if you want. You can have two billboards.
What would it say if I could have my own billboard with any kind of information on it? I would say stay present. That's exactly what I'd say.
There you go.
I think that's the biggest. I think that would be the most helpful thing on the planet for everyone. I think with the phones and the social media and all the bullshit we deal with, I think staying present is the best gift you could possibly have. And I don't think people even know. I have had more than, I'd say 90% of my students that I say look up at the mountains and can you hear the sounds? And I ask them if they can actually, how often are they in that state? And they're like, never. And I'm like, yeah, you're not living life. It's just the truth.
I love it.
Pretty sad, but it's the truth.
I thought you might go with get crossed up and get squammed out or something.
Well, you said real life. But yeah, if it was up to me, I just have a big wet board with a bunch of wet signs. and then say, yeah, bro. And that's probably what it would be.
So you may be wondering, what does incremental spending even mean? Great question. Incremental spending means additional spending, or in this case, revenue received by the course, which is more than the baseline. So let's break this down and apply it to your coaching business. If a golf facility offers lessons, they will see an incremental increase of $2 per dollar spent supporting or investing in golf instruction at the course, which means if a course invests $50,000 to support or grow their instruction services, the course will capture $100,000 in additional revenue directly from your initial $50,000 investment in golf instruction. Sure, it seems to me like investing in golf coaches is one of the safest business decisions they can make. So coaches, I ask, how can you use this newfound perspective to build more revenue or more value or more leverage into your business? To close out, I think you know by now, I'm a big fan of Istruzi and what they're doing to protect and increase the value we offer to our players and courses. A bunch of you already created an account, and I appreciate that. The download link is in the show notes, or head to Istruzi.com where you can create an account. And don't forget to add that asterisk to your last name so they know the guru sent you.
Next up, Sean Foley, top 100 and top 50 golf instructor. He works with and has worked with Tiger Woods, Justin Rose, Eric Van Rooyen, Ben On, Lydia Ko, and many others. He's also co-creator of the training aid, The Pro Sender. Since this interview, he is now on Instagram at Sean Foley Performance.
Sean Foley, welcome to the Golf Guru Show, man. I appreciate you taking the time. I mean, I know that you've probably had a busy week after last week's golf tournament, and I just really appreciate you coming on and doing this.
Yeah, my pleasure. I think we all have a busy week, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I currently am just sitting in my hotel in Atlanta with only one thing to do and talk to you, so I'm feeling pretty good about it.
Well, I appreciate that, man. I know we've been trying to get together for some time, and pretty good timing with Rosie getting to the number one ranking, and we'll kind of dive into that. But I want to go in a different direction here for those of you that don't know that we share a common passion, and that is old school hip hop, right? I want you to tell me the story of how a white kid from Canada gets into old school rap, or at the time it was just rap, right? I mean, which I think was the best time in rap. But tell me that story of how that happened.
Yeah, I guess it has to be it's almost like a perfect storm, I think, because it's something that stuck with me I've just flew from Orlando to Atlanta and had my headphones on for 4 hours in a row. And so that's something that never seems to stop. And I think my mom is West Indian. She's from Guyana. So big reggae culture, dance hall, what have you. I think the original MCs in New York were all Jamaican-born guys, right? They're immigrants from Kingston and what have you. So that probably has something to do with that, with the familiarity. With that being said, like, my dad is Scottish. My dad was like a huge Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd fan. Bob Dylan, Neil Young, all that too. So pretty much all the people I always listened to were always speaking with a message of consciousness or discussing what they perceive and their understanding of it, what have you. So the music I've listened to, is, as much as I like the music, it's always been about the lyrics, whether that's rock and roll, whether that's, I'm not that big of a country music fan. I respect certain artists like George Strait and George Jones and people who are like Patsy Cline, like people who are really, really country. I don't even know what country music is now, like with Taylor Swift and all that. Doesn't seem that country.
It's more like pop country.
Yeah, look, everything's become pop. If you look at politics and how it's grown right and it's grown left, I'm not really sure how true that is. But if it was, even that's really pop, because the thing about a pop culture is there's really not a lot of people identifying and questioning what that is. So, for me, I work with like a lot of young kids, and I work with young girls, and they're like, you got to hear this new Justin Bieber song. And, he's a Canadian. The kid's obviously done his thing, but I don't feel it. It's not like, someone may feel it, and that's great. Like, I'm not a snob into what I like is good and what you listen to is poor. But I think with that as a thing, I was listening to Pink Floyd and Boogie Down Productions at the same time. And
yes, BDP. I like it.
KRS-One is doing this song, My Philosophy, and then I'm listening to Pink Floyd and learning about foreign policy, listening to Roger Waters say Begin took Afghanistan. I can't necessarily remember what it was, but they're talking about Galtieri and Begin and Margaret Thatcher and all that type of stuff. And I just think that music artists who are conscious and spread a message, which I think typically ends in, I think all forms of consciousness lead to love, right? And
for sure,
you could be broke and have love. You could be rich and have love. You could be broke and have love. You could be rich and have no love. I just really think that the value is in the love. It's obviously why we teach, why we help people in what we do. And I think that's the forefront of the whole thing is about helping people. So if you were cleaning carpets, we'd have the best carpet cleaning service. It's just kind of how you do what you do. And I think with hip hop, with the lyrics being what it is, and then even the culture and aspect of freestyle, basically that's what we're doing all day. Very few people sit there all day and just talk that much with other human beings. And the goal is to talk less, right? But to communicate more. So
right.
It's very difficult. I mean, I do love jazz music, so I love like Pete Rock and Premier, how they infuse and serenade the beat with horns and violins and all that. And then, you know, you got a guy in most cases probably coming from a pretty bad place who has been enlightened by his understanding and awareness. So there's all these kind of neo-philosophers out there, and I just love it. It's just something that's never... Two things in my life have been constant since I was 10, hip-hop and golf, and everything else is come and go, you know?
I love it. Yeah, that's where we share that same passion. And who do you think the best rapper of all time is? I mean, that's a tough question, I know, but going back to when we were young, and now I think, you know, the game has changed so much. Even give me like a couple that you enjoy. I
mean, for me, like pretty much the first time, when was it? It was December the 7th, 1993, when I heard I was at Tennessee State, and my friend had brought down a mixtape. I think it was a DJ Clue tape from New York, and the single was "The World Is Yours" by Nas, and that's a pivotal point in my life is listening to that song. I don't know what it did to me or inside of me or what my perception of it was or what have you, but I guess I'd never just thought that could be possible. And
he's still going at it now too. He's still making music, which is cool.
His latest album, Super Whack, is awful.
Yeah, it's not good.
I mean, I love Nas, but for me, I'd say probably just bar for bar, longevity, intelligence, tone, breath, everything I look for in MC. It's just got to be Black Thought from The Roots. It's not even a fair fight right now with that guy. I think I would say like my initial top 5 were probably Nas and Rakim.
There you go. Yep, Rakim's my man.
Guru from Gangstar. And then people sleep on Pharoah Monk from Organized Confusion. I mean, Pharoah Monk is just a monster. And then there was the next level, like when hip hop had kind of died in the eyes of people. So guys like Terminology, Rex, Skyzoo, Torre, and now this new generation. Yeah. Obviously, Jermaine Cole and J. Cole is unbelievable.
Yeah, I was going to say, who do you like that's kind of new? That I mean, the old school feel is sort of almost come and gone. But I mean, Logic is really good, I think. Joey Badass. Yeah. I mean, what do you think about those guys?
Joey is amazing. I actually spent a night in Orlando with him. A good friend of mine is Static Selecta, who's a DJ and producer. And so he was spinning for that tour. And so I spent the whole night in this bus with Joey and Kirk Knight and CJ Fly and Nick Caution, all the young Pro Era kids. And it was awesome. You know, they were just 17-year-old kids, and they didn't remind me of anything different than when I spoke at Sage Valley and on behalf of Nike to the kids at the Sage Valley Invitational, which is kind of like the Masters for kids, so to speak, right? Yep. In golf, it's the same. Like these kids, we talked about everything for 3 hours. Then they went and did the show. They did about 3 hours, and then we went back onto the bus after, and they started playing instrumentals and just freestyled for 2 hours. I didn't even get home till like 4. So it didn't matter. It wasn't about making money. It wasn't about anything like that. It was just about them working on their craft. And I think that to move on is the reason that Justin Rose is number 1 in the world is because he's a master of his craft. And
yep, for sure.
Rook, he's made a ton of money. He's one of the greatest players of his generation. He's a class act. He's everything that a professional should be, but he still goes to work like he has to pay the mortgage and his kids haven't eaten in a week. And
still hungry.
That's it. He's still hungry because that's what it is. It's not about all the Instagram followers and all that. I mean, all that stuff's cool. I mean, he's worth following. He's a class act, but it's just about how do we, this year, our stroke average is 69.00. How do we get to 68.00? So where is that? Do we find that in sleep? Do we find that in diet? Do we find that in golf ball? Where do we find that? I think we've had a great, unbelievable 9 years together, and sometimes we're slightly dangerous around each other because we're looking under every rock. But I think the key is between the both of us, we've been able to realize like what makes him great and kind of the big picture of, okay, he's 38. Technically, he should be better at 40. So it's kind of the same thing. It's like watching Black Thought put down that 12-minute freestyle at 52 years old. He's on Jimmy Fallon. He's making more money than he ever thought he would make. And he gets on there and just says, hold on. And that freestyle to me is equivalent to the 2000 U.S. Open, like that's 15-stroke lead or whatever it was, 15 or 12 or some crazy, 15, I think. That's what that is to Eminem, to all those guys. That was just kind of like, you guys just sit down and watch a pro. And I feel like that's what Justin has evolved into.
No doubt. And I want to get into Justin here in a minute, but let's backtrack just for a second, just for the listeners to kind of take us back through your career. And I know you went to Tennessee State and majored in philosophy. So tell us a little bit sort of how you got into the business and how you got to where you are today. Just give us a little lineage.
I wish I had a better story. I just, I kind of had like a lifetime D average, and I had zero in.
You weren't the smartest kid in the class. Come on.
No, I definitely didn't care to read what they were teaching me. I probably outread everyone, just not my school books. And I was always really fascinated with the golf swing, golf in general, but at that time, the golf swing. And I luckily, one day I got fired in Nashville. I got fired from Opryland Springhouse, which was a golf course. And on my way, like up the ramp from the cart barn, this guy came walking down with these big signs that said John Jacobs Golf Schools. And he was like, "Hey, do you know where I can put these?" And I was like, "Yeah, man, you can put them over there." And he introduced himself to me, and I said, like, "Look, I just got fired, so I'm out of here." And he was like, "You need a job?" And I said, "Yeah, but I mean, depends, but yeah, I need a job. I'm waiting tables on the other side of town as well." And he's like, "Well, why don't you just be like my assistant?" And he said, "You know anything about the golf swing?" I said, I've kind of studied it for a long time, from the Golf Machine to all the Golf Digest articles to whatever you could get your hands on technically, right? And John Jacobs, obviously himself, I had all his stuff. So he said, "Hey, why don't you do this? We're going to do 3-day schools, and then we'll have 2-day schools. We got to go to dinner with the clients. We got to meet them the first night." And so it took me through the whole thing. And so I made like $25 a day until I did my play-in with the PGA. And then I made like $85 a day, which meant I could stop waiting tables. So that was nice. And then we created like this little business where we had these 8 couples come in for 3 days. And when we started getting smart about it, we started like getting car services and sending them out to restaurants at night, knowing that so much of what we would earn would come from our tips. So I just knew, like, I can do this. And it was really easy to try and obviously help people who were at 20, 25 handicaps, but it was more about the experience. And I think that's a big part. That's an important part of coaching, is the experience that you give that person. So the ability for them to know when they're in front of you that they're the only thing that matters in the whole world. And that's why we have to work constantly on recognizing that we're in presence. And if we're not, it's just because we're taking ourselves out of it. It's interesting how people talk about the present, and being in the now. And it's like, look, I'm in the now all the time. I can't be anywhere but with you right now unless my thinking takes me away from here. So it's all those things, I think, lead into being a good instructor. It's about having all those pieces of the puzzle in line. Some of that is knowledge, some of it's wisdom, some of it's experience, some of it's like sitting in the back shop cleaning clubs for 10 years. It's all part of an education. And I lost my visa in the U.S. as a Canadian, so I had to go back home.
Now, what year was this?
99.
Okay.
So I went back home, and I got back home in October. So obviously the Canadian golf business is pretty much down until April. Mm-hmm. There's indoor places and stuff like that, but all those places were filled. So I got an interview at Glen Abbey from my mentor, Ben Kern. He hooked me up with this guy, Tom Jackson. And Glen Abbey's been the home of the Canadian Open for many years. I went to high school maybe 12, 13 minutes from there. So that was a cool spot. So in the interim, until that started, I drove a forklift from probably 8 at night till 3 in the morning. And so I realized through all my experiences is kind of like what a fool I'd been. It kind of put me into a position where I knew that I had to technically like shit or get off the pot. Right. And I think I was fortunate to, 1, have opportunities, and then 2, to have a lot of debt, because I was not really inspired to do well. It was survival. It was that. And what do you want to do at 24? Like move back in with your parents. I mean, I love my parents, but
you don't want to move back in with them. Yeah.
No, 100%. I mean, I don't want my 7-year-old to ever move out, but I probably won't feel that way when he's 23. Right.
Exactly.
So I started at Glen Abbey and that was the beginning. We had a big academy there, and we used to just answer the phone and just sign lessons up. But, I did things. I almost got fired once because like my first 2 months, I felt like the lessons were going too much to senior instructors. And I was this arrogant little prick who thought that I was the second coming. So what I did is printed up like 10,000 3 half-hour lessons for free and took them around pretty much within 40 kilometers of Glen Abbey into all the areas I knew where people played golf or could afford it, and put these things out of people's doors. I mean, I was teaching those things for like 6 years, bro. It was pretty classic. Yeah. But the first year, I went from like 24,000 in revenue to the second was 60.
Yeah, you just got to get them in.
To the fourth was 200. I remember before I left to go down to Orlando, I remember there was 8 instructors, and I was the director of instruction at that time. And that 1 year in lesson revenue, I out-taught the other 7 instructors combined.
So how did that happen though? When you made that switch to go to Florida, I know that was a huge change for you and big part of your career path. So was there a time that was it a mindset or what?
I could see the ceiling. Like I was working with a lot of college players in Toronto. I was working with a lot of Canadian Tour players, a lot of Hooters Tour players, a few, I don't even know what the name of the tour was then, maybe Nationwide, but at that point, players. And I've always been fascinated by pro golfers ever since I was little. Like I was in some interesting environments with like in Canada where that was kind of like the spot for all the pros. And so I used to sit on wire baskets and watch these guys smash balls. And I don't know how much I ever wanted to be them. I just was like really interested by them. So I got this opportunity to be the director of instruction at a golf academy for Canadian kids. We'd heard like with the different academies in the States that parents were just not happy with the product they were getting. So we thought, well, why not? And so there was some investment. I was sent down. My wife couldn't get a visa for like 3 months, so she came down after. But we both just quit our job. I mean, I was doing well and my wife was probably doing better. But, I was 30 years old and I could see the ceiling. It was like, I felt like thinking I was one of the best in Canada at what I did. It was almost like the comparison to being the tallest midget. And I just thought, like, this is what I want to do. Sometimes you think that, and then you do it and go, maybe that's not what I wanted to do. But
at that age, you at least give it a shot, right? It's a good time to take risk.
Yeah, I was being driven by insecurity and
sure. And money.
Being driven by the illusion of whatever I thought success was at that time.
Sure.
So we went down there, and I was there. We had like 2 kids. I think if you combined our money, I think we took a $500,000 pay cut, and
oh my God.
And I think we were at $500,000 combined. So my wife is like, she's incredible. I mean, I didn't ever really need her to believe in me because I just believed in myself and I just always thought it would work out. But
how was that conversation? Was she just like, okay, or was there a little bit of blowback?
I mean, Kay could probably be the Prime Minister of Canada. She's just this incredibly strong, like, woman who's, it's kind of like hanging out with like a gorgeous dude, right? Like she's just as cool as, when we go to dinner, we don't sit down and like, we might go to a nice restaurant, but we just sit at the bar, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
like
that's perfect, right?
Yeah.
You go out to have dinner with your wife and get away from your kids, and then all you do is talk about your kids. So
yeah,
you'd have to ask her. I mean, she's probably scared shitless, dude. I mean,
right.
I've just been through a lot of scary stuff, so I'm not really scared anymore, realizing that I was pretty much the reason for my fear. So we did it, and then a couple months into it, it was not going very well. I hadn't met anybody. I had no clients, period. Just the kids in the academy, but I was being paid beans, and that wasn't, with a mortgage at home and rent down in Orlando, that wasn't going to work. That was like that's my way in legally. And so now after 9/11, it got difficult for Canadians to come into the U.S. and work. Whereas before, I mean, I remember in high school when we used to go over the border, we used to show our license. And I guess it was one day I talked to Kate and she was upset, like, what are we doing? This is ridiculous. We got it made here. And we went down there. And I think that was like the first and last time we argued. So the next day I went to work, and what I would do is I dropped these kids off at school, and then I would go and just like solicit lessons I'm there at Orange County with that giant driving range.
Right.
So I would
it's massive.
It's massive. So
Yeah.
I would just solicit lessons and do what I could and all that, but it wasn't going very well. And I was driving in to go do that. And, my phone rang, and it was Stephen Ames.
I was going to say, yeah, that was your big break for tour, right?
Yeah, so that was Stephen Ames called me, and in his way, in the Stephen way, I love that man, but he's got less filter than anyone who's ever lived. He just said, hey, I'm going to give you a chance. I had my back looked at by a chiropractor in Toronto who said he worked with you on the weekends. You guys used to do seminars for chiros and RMTs, and he thinks what I'm doing is a mechanical issue. So I'm going to give you a shot. Came down. We spent 3 days together. We had a great time. He could kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel. And then he went out on the weekend after he left and won the Skins game, made like $1 million. So I went from literally thinking literally with a minute before he called me, I was thinking, man, and I remember sitting there for 1 second. And right before he called me, I thought, I'm never going to ever doubt what I'm doing again, as I have on this car ride. Like, there's no room for it. And literally maybe 2 minutes later, the phone rang, and I actually thought it was like my brother fucking with me or someone messing with me going, hey, it's Stephen Ames. And I'm like, right. So that was it. And from Stephen came Sean, from Sean came Hunter. And then on that fortunate day, the USGA put Sean O'Hare and Justin Rose together at Bethpage Black in the 2009 U.S. Open, and Sean hit a 1-yard cut with every single club, and Rosie didn't. And after he missed the cut, Rosie asked me in the dining room for an opinion, and that was like 9 years ago and 3 months.
That's incredible. Yeah, it's like you just got to be ready, right? I mean, you never know when that door's going to open.
Well, I think everyone's ready. I mean, the fact is, it's like when people say, oh, you instruct Justin Rose. It's like, no, I don't instruct Justin Rose. You don't instruct Justin Rose, right? Obviously, we stay up with the times and we see what like some of the really brilliant people in golf are doing. And gosh, since I started working with Rosie, I had went through pretty much all of Mac's stuff, and then went through a bunch of stuff with James Lights, and then went through studying all of Sasha McKenzie's stuff and looking at Mike Jacobs' stuff and all these different things and seeing where those things could apply if they could apply. And so that's kind of the key. Is I've been to Atlanta now for 9 years in a row. And for me, coming to the Tour Championship is important because it means that, you endured the whole year at this level. And I think that every year you get here, you want to be able to sit there on Tuesday night and think, am I better than I was a year ago? And as long as you can keep saying you are, it doesn't matter who helps you get there. I mean, that's the key, right? The key is being smart enough to know who's really smart, mate. I mean, that's what life is.
100%. Yeah. So let me read you something that I found, I think, in one of your interviews, and they were interviewing Justin as well, I think, and he said, Sean does not look at me as a golfer. He looks at me as an athlete from a biomechanical point of view. He is not necessarily wrapped up in what makes a swing look pretty. He wants what works for me from a scientific point of view. This is not necessarily the position that everyone strives for, but that is what I like about Sean. And I think that's got to be, and I was talking to a couple of my friends, Sky Caux, and some of the guys that have been on the podcast, Mark Blackburn, and these guys that are teaching tour players. And it's got to be such a fit, I guess, for you and the player. And I guess looking at what their strengths are and how they learn. I mean, I know it's a big part of it. Can you talk about that a little bit? I mean, do you feel like it was a perfect fit for you and Justin when you met him?
I just think, look, as you probably do, I do, Scott probably does, Dana probably does, all these golf coaches probably do. We all work with kids and we don't charge them. And that's because it matters to us. And if they can't afford it, then no problem, So you have a couple of bank accounts, you have one at Chase Bank and you have one in your soul, and they both have to say sufficient funds. But when you get out here on the PGA Tour, I went to school earlier to see my sons before I went to the airport, and my 7-year-old was just bawling. And so the thing is, this isn't so much a total labor of love in the sense that, like, working with young kids it's a business. So you have to be a chameleon. A great salesman who's selling a great product could sell it to an engineer, to an artist, to a musician, to a doctor. And I think that that's the thing you can't read about. I think that's the thing you can't take a seminar on, is that I think a life of diversity and experience and all those things help with that. But I would say that with Rosie, there's a chemistry there. I mean, look, I probably dated 100 girls that I could have married in 4 weeks, and there was only one left after 5 weeks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's just, who knows? Like,
right.
That's the things I thought about my wife when I met her. I never thought about a girl. I'd have convinced myself to never think that way. And so who knows of the deeper energies and wave frequencies and fields of the physics of this space we're in and how that all works. But yeah, I mean, I've got a passenger. I sit shotgun in his car and get to watch him become what he's become and help him along the way to do so. As he was finding himself, I was finding myself. See, the thing is, it's the tricky part about life. I'm sitting there in the cafeteria today with my 7-year-old, and these kids are just adorable at this table. They're eating lunch, and it's really funny, right? And it's funny, sometimes it takes you to see a bunch of other people's kids to realize that your kid's a child. You know what I mean?
Yes, for sure.
Because we're too demanding of a 7-year-old, right? So you see these other 7, you know. So that kind of hit me first. And then second, I looked at this table, and the table was full of about 30 kids, and it looked like Baskin and Robbins. And it was just all these different kids from all these different places and races. And some were sharing food, some weren't. Some were skinny, some were chubby, some were quiet, but they were all getting along. And I thought, like, man, what is it about like life that, you know, we have to get educated and grow up to like not discuss things with each other and hate people we disagree with and just believe that what we think is the way forward. So I think going back to my point is when people say they found themselves, you're just finding that inner kid. I mean, kids are curious, they're interested, they're excited, they're open, they're encouraged. And so we're always that. And I think people think you need to build things onto people to make them better. But I believe the building's there already. You know, you just have to, you just kind of have to chisel it out and get rid of all the shit that's
right.
blocking what's going on. Right.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. I always tell my students that everybody has a good golf swinger. It's kind of like the statue of David. We're just chipping away all the excess.
Yeah. It's not about change. It's about growth. It's like change isn't always a good thing. You know, change is when people are like, I'll make it a swing change. It's like, well, what does that even mean? Like, first of all, you know, they talk about Tiger with his 5 swing changes. And it's like, it's only really a change if there's a method applied to it. Right. So the fact is like, we kind of have a blueprint. I have a blueprint with Rosie. I have a blueprint. I've been telling Cameron Champ to get his hands in and get his backswing long and finish tall since he was 14. He's now 22 years old. And so every once in a while, we've had to kind of like play around with ball positions or alignments or things like that. But the blueprint's kind of there right away. I mean, Justin Rose had a very bent right ankle, very bent right knee, and a cup left wrist. And of course he could play like that, but it doesn't mathematically, it doesn't make sense to play like that. And so what you do is, because I feel like right now in my career, I'm probably as harmless as I've ever been. And, you know, the oath that they take, do no harm, is something I really think about, because the people that you haven't helped keep you up at night and you can't sleep and you realize your responsibility, what it was and how you let them down. And I think I'm almost driven more by knowing I won't harm anyone than I am by how much I can help them. And I think that that's safe. And I think that that's fair.
That's because you've got better information now, right? I mean, that's what makes you harmless. Would you agree? So you know when not to say something, or you know when not to change something that's going to be detrimental to that player. Yeah.
And unfortunately, to learn that, it doesn't come on chapter 2. It comes in chapter life. And, exactly. You got to screw some people up to figure that out. Yeah. But I think we got to be careful, you know, like, I mean, the fact of the matter is, dude, we're talking about golf swings. You and I are not having this podcast because both of us are giving our views on our jobs as child oncologists. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, exactly.
That's the one thing that fascinates me. Like, I don't know how many, I'm not on social media. I don't have any accounts. My academy in Orlando has an account, but it's not personalized. It's got actually very little on there. And people say, well, why don't you do social media? You know, you leave a lot of money on the table with that. And it's like, what is privacy worth? And how important is it? Like, I don't really care where your lesson is at P3. Okay. Like when I look at social media and I see that like before and after, it's like, to me, because I've been there, is I just want those guys to understand sometimes that you don't need to prove to me you're a good coach. The person in front of you paying you is the only one that matters. So this is before our lesson. This is after our lesson. Well, the change I'm seeing at P5 is going to take them a year to be able to keep it on the course doing that. So that's the part. It's like, that's kind of where maybe it's got nothing to do with golf. Maybe it's just the whole generation of that. And I appreciate it as a business tool. And I think it can be used properly, but it's just what I see as guys fighting with each other over what matters with the pelvis and this and that. It's like, well, how do you have so much time to talk about that bullshit?
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I put my kids and my players on Instagram, but which they enjoy that, and it's a bit of a branding tool. But yeah, when you start arguing over semantics on Facebook, I think it gets a little out of hand because people, like you said, they don't treat each other with respect, and nobody's learning anything. I think debate is very, very good in a lot of forums, but sometimes it just gets to where nobody's learning anything, and you're making enemies. You're making yourself look like an idiot.
Debate is good when two people are in front of each other.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so much is lost in the typing and what that, like if say me and you were going to meet tonight and you were 5 minutes late and I text you at 8:05, are you here yet? It could look like, oh, fuck, are you here yet? Like, oh, yeah. I'm late. Yeah. Or if I called you and went, yo, Sutton, where are you?
It can be misconstrued, right? Yeah, I get it.
I get a lot of times when I call someone and I go, what are you up to? And they look in the phone and they go, I don't know, I'm just FaceTiming a dude right now. And I'm like, hey, how you doing? I FaceTime everybody because I want to see what your face looks like when I'm telling you this. You know what I mean?
I hear you. That's awesome. Yeah, so we'll have to do round 2, actually face to face, maybe this fall. That would be even better.
People be like, I think he had 5 beers on that call.
Yeah, and that's okay.
No, absolutely fine.
So talk a little bit about if you're comfortable talking about Justin, like what again for the coaches out there, it's always interesting to kind of see what you guys are working on and sort of what his tendencies are. So can you talk a little bit about like when he's playing his best? What's his pattern look like? And then what are some of the tendencies you guys sort of try to maintain and sort of fight? Talking full swing, obviously.
Well, I say when he's playing his best, that's probably an algorithm of a lot of stuff, right? Like sleep, hydration, family, everything. When they're playing well, there's a peace, there's a clarity. When he's swinging well, which would mean either like in practice or on the course, I think that Rosie used to kind of flex in the backswing and stand up in the downswing and pull down on the club and then twist it closed and chase it down the line. And he was really good. I think what happens is when we get into that pattern too much, his lower right side takes a beating. And now at 38, we can't really do that. So basically, we've worked on trying to make the posture more neutral, more friendly. And I did that with the help of a bunch of chiropractors. And then I had a really cool talk one night on tour with George Gankas. And he got me to really see posture for that person in a different way. So to soften everything and try to create slack in the system. And then from there, Rosie's not laid off. He's not across the line. He's like very vanilla in his top of the swing position. So from there is just trying to get the left wrist a little more flexed. Make sure that the pivot and the tilts allow the right shoulder to still have room to go external in transition. Rosie's blessed with a great amount of thoracic rotation, and only really because his pelvis is retroverted, he's only got maybe they would test the hardware and say 4 degrees of internal hip rotation. But there's a difference between hardware and software, man. You can put someone on a table and assess them. You can assess a wide receiver on the table and then watch him go out and play and go, whoa. So the nervous system is like this
add stress, right?
Yeah, it's just this incredible thing. So
right. So is he more? He's a fader, right? Would you say that's more of his stock? I mean, and that's probably easier on his back, like you said, with trying to get his thoracic.
He hits it so straight. I don't even know how you hit it that straight, but he blows my mind, man, with I've never seen anybody in my life hit 10 down on a ball and get the path to 0 and hit 7 up on the ball and get the path to 0. It's crazy. That's his, whatever that intelligence or instinct or intuition is within him, that's always been number one. So the key is getting the geometry and the math like a little cleaner so that when he goes all the way into himself, it won't take as much practice over time and it'll be easier on the body and he'll just be a little bit more acute. But yeah, that he blows me away sometimes with that when we're on the range and we're sitting there and we start with like a sand wedge and he's hitting these like flighted spinners at 12,000 spin on a 75-yard shot.
Jeez. And
he's canceling out all this down with left. And then he starts hitting drivers at 120, 6 degrees up, and still gets the swing direction like 4 out and always stays right in that 0 range. So it's amazing. He can't explain it. I'm sure Usain Bolt can't explain it. I mean, Ted Williams tried to teach everyone what he taught in batting, and no one ever batted like him, right? So, yeah, I think that's where he's special. So he always try to coil around a bent right knee, and then he'd like to get the club face in a certain position. As a kid, his dad has been his ultimate coach, Ken. And, basically Faldo was obviously like a hero of his at the time. So, you emulate kind of what your heroes do. And I'd say the shot that really used to affect him was kind of a snap hook. And I haven't really seen him hit too many of those in a long, long time. Yeah, he's just really pure, man. I personally like when he wedges to short irons that he hits flighted draws, and mid irons can go both way kind of on a mid flight, and then he can just hit the highest pull cuts with long irons. And then the drivers just, now that he's a 120 guy, 178 ball speed guy, I just kind of like to aim slightly down the right and just send it. I don't really know how you shape a driver anymore. I think you could be Kenny Perry where you have like a distinct Zach Johnson pattern but for the most part, I think, you could be Brooks and hit that pull cut. But I think for the most part, just kind of about 12 at 2250 and just ripped is perfect. I think Rosie this year, when he was at 288 driving distance maybe 10 years ago at 64% fairways, and this year he's 304 at 65%.
Wow. What is that? Is that technology or... I know he's in the gym. He's pretty fit. I mean, what is that? No, people don't appreciate, because he's such an elegant and like classy guy. The one thing I hear about him more than anything is when people see him for the first time, they're like, I had no idea he was that big. Yeah, he's a big dude. He's a big man, right? So yeah, he is. He's got to be in shoes, he's got to be 6'4", 190, and he's got big legs and he's got a big ass. And the one thing about Rosie, right, is he's a businessman. He just, remember when Jay-Z said, I'm not a businessman, I'm a businessman? Yeah. That's what he reminds me of, because the people that he's brought into his team over the years who have kind of come and gone and did their part. I mean, this guy knows a lot about food. He knows a lot about sleep. He knows a lot about hydration. He knows a lot about training and lifting. He's very sharp, man. He's a very sharp guy. And I don't think you have to be. But if you look at it right now, I mean, look at the last few number ones, right? DJ, people talk about in golf, you either have to be a genius or be dumb. I mean, that's the biggest load of shit I've ever heard in my world. I mean, like honestly, like no one who's played on tour has been in between a genius and dumb. I mean, why do we say things like that, right? That's stupid. No one, DJ was number one. No one's who's number one in the world in anything are dumb. You hear me, right? Yeah. Well, he's smart enough to hire Joey D for every day. He's working out and he's keeping him healthy and he's doing okay. He's smart enough to like do less interviews than anyone else. That's right. Right? Yeah. I remember one day I was limping because I have some ankle issues that I deal with because I'm a billy goat on this tour, but I was kind of limping and DJ's like, hey, bro. And I said, DJ, what's up? He said, what's going on? I said, I just got some issues in the back of my leg or whatever. He's like, was that down to the calcaneus, like in the subtalar joint? And I was like, I thought to myself, did you just say a 5-syllable word? and then I knew it. I kind of knew it. I winked at him and I was like, you just showed your hand, dude. I knew you were smart. Exactly. I knew you were smart. Yeah. Right? I think he just likes to play like that.
So it's no different. Look, a tour player and a 15 handicap at your golf course is not a lot different, dude. If they don't turn their pelvis and they don't get into their right heel and they don't get in transition into the heel of their right hand, it doesn't matter. It's like, right. It's just what's going to happen. So there's so many people who could work with any of the players on tour. It would just be whether or not they could handle the whole thing. People out there, golf instructors alike, to realize that the guys coaching on tour, that does not mean they're the best at all. It doesn't mean that at all. So that's not to me, it's become the parameter or the discussion of what it is, but that it really isn't. I thought that's what it was. And I've learned so much from guys over the years who teach at local driving ranges. That's not what it is, but it's cool. I've done it now for 11 years and, it's got a lot of sacrifices and all that, but it's also the perfect petri dish for someone like me who loves to observe human beings and behavior and high performance. I can't think of a better lab than the PGA Tour. I mean, this year, my guys have been paired with Adam Scott, with Rory, with DJ, with John Rahm, you name it. I get to sit there for 18 holes and watch the best in the world and how they go about it. And after, if they're in a good enough mood, ask them, you hit this shot. What do you think about when you do that? So,
yeah, like, it's so cool.
When I teach short games kids now, I'm like, what do you want to learn? I want to learn how to do this. I'm like, well, that sounds like a Mickelson thing. So Phil Mickelson taught me, if you do this, this, and this will come out. Boom. Luke Donald showed me this in the bunker. Danny Willett showed me this in the bunker. This is how Justin Rose likes to hit on an uphill inside. So there's a lot of times, Jason, when I'm out there and I'm in a group and I'll watch a guy hit a shot. Like I was out a couple of weeks ago with Abraham Answer, and he was at Boston. He was on the range, but chipping onto this green. And no one could hold this green, and his ball was spinning back. And so I just went right over right away and said, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
He's like,
what'd he say?
Bro. He's like, bro, I like to do this, and then I do this, and then I do this. And I'm like, well, that's not helpful. Yeah, right? Like that's
He didn't talk about flexion, extension, or like radial horn or deviation.
No, the least helpful lesson I've ever got in my life. So I just videoed it, and I was like, okay. He kind of long arc, uses rotation, extension of his body, and then literally is slice out to in. And he matches them up. So he probably just hits a little across it, but the ball doesn't spin right when it lands. I'm like, so when you see it, you're kind of like, okay, he's kind of like a slicing Jason Day with a Cameron Beckman pivot. And that's how I see it in my head. It's like, I just see the different guys who
matchups.
I remember watching Cameron Beckman at the San Antonio one year. And I was like, he was hitting 40-yard pitch shots. And I was like, all right, I'm going to see this guy. And what I started noticing is like a lot of the guys who could really flight these beautiful little wedges with a little right to left on them, the club obviously came from very in. Their eyes were on the target. They were very Duval, and they just kind of hit it. And I started being able to go back to where I lived and do it and notice like, man, the faster I open up, the better I can hit this shot. But the fastest I can open up is if I use my eyes first. So the one thing I think is missing in golf, and it's funny because a lot of guys get treated on their neck, is kind of what Mac looked into as far as like neck tilts and as far as the head rotating. I think, man, you just think about it, right? You look at Stenson, you look at Annika, you look at Duval, you look at DJ when he was playing really, really well. And his head is down more right now than it has been. His eyes were really early before. And what's happening now is his head down, that shoulder doesn't stay external as long. So he kind of crosses up that cut. But yeah, I mean, just think about all the people who looked at the target and just how well they flowed. And it's just not something we really talk about. In order for me to hit like a really good shot, say in the current modern terms, if I don't turn my head, I have no chance because I don't have the shoulders, the T-spine, the hips, even, I mean, how am I doing? Both of my tibias are locked into internal rotation, so that's not good.
No.
So the thing is, when you start looking at the foot and you start looking at the tibia, you start looking at the femur, we're so busy looking at the pelvis. I'm so grateful that all these years I've been on tour, my roommates are all chiropractors and they're all sports doctors. So they look at it totally different. the thing is, they're all very smart. So they could listen to me download like one of Sashow's speeches and go, they all studied physics anyways. So they're all like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then they start talking, well, if this guy's big toe doesn't work this way, then there's no way he'll be able to get the tibia to move, the femur to move. So for me, what I want to do is, I spent many years now with Mark Brody, but like really, really dive into the data and the analytics of performance. And it's not about how you look at P5 or whatever. That's part of it. But I mean, I know kids who have the most money golf swings you've ever seen. They hit it so far. And the problem is they think they hit it 10 yards further than they do. So they end up in the front bunker all the time.
Right.
So, And then when they practice bunker shots, they hit 50 bunker shots from the same freaking lie. So it's like so stupid. So to me, it's about like, I'm very interested in trying to understand why the Navy SEALs from 2012 to 2017, I want to know why more SEALs died in training than died at war.
Yeah. How you put pressure on your kids to simulate tournaments is so difficult.
Yeah, the thing is what you have to simulate is the tendency is when they go to tournaments, they don't play as well as they normally do, and then they get frustrated. So how do you help them through frustration? Because frustration is just part of it. Like the fact of the matter, I think it was I forget the music artist, but I think it might have been Bobby Womack. But someone asked him a question about life, and he said, "Man, you got to get through it to get to it."
Yeah, I like that.
That's kind of it. So it's getting kids and players to understand, like when they're at times of adversity, that this is where all the wisdom comes from. Like, this is not a bad time. This is just, it's a time. You define what you think it is, but there's a lot of learning going on right now. And I think that's kind of it. I think that's why a lot of great players have fallen off at a certain point, because they just stopped learning. They just thought, well, I'm great. I'll just show up and it'll be fine. But that's it to me. Like, my discussion with Cameron Champ the other night was all about the discussion on the Kaepernick ad. And, what that meant to him, what it meant to me, and blah, blah, blah. So you see yourself as a mentor for these young kids, because sometimes these kids just end up asking you questions they'd ask their dad, but they don't have the ability to be that vulnerable around their dad. So they need someone there to help them through the confusion in their head or to help guide them. I mean, with my young players, man, you better know I'm paying attention to who their girlfriend is. I am.
Right. Yeah,
that's a huge part. I mean, what am I going to do? What am I going to zero them out? No, I'm going to let them know, like, maybe it's not the right one.
That's right. Yeah,
he can be zeroed out and meet the wrong one, and be zeroed out on all day, and then get on the course and be awful. And that's not what we're after either.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm mentoring my staff and a lot of the guys that reach out for help. I'm trying to get these young guys to understand how important the EQ part is, right? The self-awareness, the empathy, the reading the body language and the learning styles. I mean, how do you teach that, or how do you learn that as a coach? Or is it just experience?
I guess I learned it because it mattered, right?
Because you cared, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, you can't teach that. I mean, you can be an example of that, but when people corporations bring in a motivational speaker, it's like, no, you can't motivate anybody. You can inspire people to look inward, but no one's ever figured out anything by going outward. So it's the same thing, right? It's the same situation. I mean, and then from us, we have to have the understanding that maybe the people that we're working with, they're not as into it as we are as well. So
right, exactly.
Right. Look, what golf needs like the head pro who does teach a bit to understand the things that are very prevalent and out there now. And they've been out there for years. Guys have been teaching them whatever's going on now for 60 years. But the fact is, we now can identify, and we can estimate better. And that's it. That's how more people play the game well. Is not going to be the people on your podcast are not really teaching a lot of people. So it's more the fact of, like, throughout the country, that the syllabus and the education profile is better. And right. That comes down to the PGA, that comes down to the Canadian PGA, that comes down to the European PGA on doing that. Sometimes those paradigms are very slow to shift, even when there is prevalent evidence that they're not doing it right.
Right.
So
100%. It's like, it's up to us though, right? I mean, here's a good question. If you were teaching a class, sticking on that same subject, to young coaches, and you were the professor, what would the curriculum look like, and what subjects do you think would be important?
Well, I think it would be applied, right? So it wouldn't be like we wouldn't necessarily have a physics course because like there's a lot of that I wouldn't need to know in order to be able to understand the physics like in a rotational sport. So there would be that. Then there would obviously be like an intricate look into ball flight, both horizontally and vertically, right? That's fair.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Then there would be obviously a focus on the human body. So what flexes, what extends, what is, if we have the perfect body, what is this supposed to do and this supposed to do and this supposed to do? And then if this doesn't do that, then what are your parachutes? So you have that. I think something that's been massively important to me has been meditation and being able to kind of understand where I'm at through meditation. So sometimes you don't really understand the narratives that are running your life that are behind the scenes and they're kind of behind the curtain. So meditation, just the ability to learn how to be able to, with breath, get present and just focus back in.
Do you use an app for that, or have you had some training?
No, I've just done it since I was 12. So
I've
done it. Yeah. When I was 12, I converted to Buddhism from Catholicism.
Okay.
I wouldn't say I'm really a Buddhist or anything like that, but that took up the next 5 years, a lot of studying, a lot of my life. So I just like the philosophy of it all. I think it matches kind of the universe and the math of it all too. So there's that. Obviously, with my young kids, it's like we test their caloric intake and we find out that most of them, definitely when they play, they're not even near to the caloric intake that they need. So, I mean, there's guys on tour who eat 2,500 calories in 18 holes.
Yeah.
So, that all came from studying. That came from getting someone smarter than you about something. The key is just to know enough to know who's actually like really good at it. Because the saying that it takes a village to raise a child, I mean, Justin Rose has this team of people behind him, these fascinating, amazing people where they've looked into everything. And so basically, if we know that we're going to come into certain areas where there'll be fatigue in that, we know that sleep is probably more important than hitting 100 balls after the round. Understanding that if we recover, we'll be able to adapt. If we're over prepared, then we could get tired. So it's the idea of preparation, I think, is very Western. Like, yeah, we got to prepare. And it's like all these people prepare. And then in the moment, things aren't the way they thought it would be. And they spend so much time trying to figure out why that is rather than just accept it and adapt and move on. So basically, creating skills within players to where they can adapt if they need to. I get a lot of pros who come to see me and they ask me these questions, and it's like they're looking for the secret, even so much like the book, The Secret, right? Like, give me
right.
Talk about making $1 billion. I mean, you just got to have to make people believe there's a secret. Look, it's about having passion. It's about being curious. It's about being able to endure pain. It's about being able to get disappointed and dusting yourself off. And more than anything, success to me now is that when I lay down at night, I go to bed pretty quick. And when I wake up, I'm at least excited to go out and do what I need to do. I think that as long as I do that, there'll always be a market for me. Technologically, if you think about the earth right now, human beings are in the best place they've ever been.
Yep,
period.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
But man, I think we should be in so much of a better place.
What do you think needs to change?
It's just, look, it just comes down to empathy, man.
I
people
agree.
Don't care.
100% agree with that.
People just don't care, dude. And now they have the ability to have sent to their phone exactly what they agree with. And we're getting to where we are creating a culture of apathy because it's like, fuck, I didn't know what happened. Too bad. That's it. We're giving kids trophies for finishing second. It's like so stupid. It's like that happens like on the ski hill. It happens in athletic sports. But I mean, here we are. We got a team who are 0-8 and they get trophies. And it's like, that's just anti-Darwin, man. That's not what it is. The thing is, if we create a generation of kids who don't feel shame or guilt
or failure,
empathy, or failure, then we're gonna have apathetic adults because that's something that really kind of drives me nuts. Yeah,
I totally agree. I mean, I think we all know because we've all had it in our lives and our careers that failure is the way you learn. I mean, and I think we are. I mean, I think I'm guilty of that with my kids a lot of times is you want to cover their failures and not let them suffer. And I think that's a mistake. I mean, have you had a big failure or roadblock in your career that you feel like has set you up for success afterwards? Is there just some story that you could share with us?
I mean, I can't even count. It's, I can't, they're all top 10 of all time. Like it's and some of them probably legally get me in trouble. But yeah, it's
one that you can share on the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, like, where do you start? It feels like every day. I feel like every day I'm disappointed at what I do. And what I mean by that is it's nothing that gets me depressed. It's just, I just always know that there's better. There's a way to be clear. There's a way to be more present. There's a way to be more researched, more understood. So I just don't feel like I've ever had a day where I've ever like technically patted myself on the back. I just don't think that works.
Yeah, I think that's a dangerous position to be in when you start actually thinking you're good.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Look, you're only as good as the person in front of you. I mean,
exactly.
It wasn't like, what was it? Basically 14 months ago, Justin Rose is 16th in the world and his back is sore in England, and Twitter and that whole universe lights up at how shit I am. And so what are you going to do? I mean, whatever. You took the job, you know what the game is. And then you just realize after a while, it's like, look, until someone walks a mile in my shoes and sees what I deal with, then one, it's not really my business what they think. And two, my business isn't their business. So you just stay very clear of all that ridiculous stuff. It's easy to point fingers. I think success makes mediocrity jealous, but it's like a jealousy combined with an admiration. So you just deal, be a good man and be compassionate to others regardless of who they are until they give you a reason you shouldn't. And it's not that difficult, man.
So what do you do when you have days where you feel stressed out or just overwhelmed? Do you have any go-tos or any tactics that you could share?
I never really get there, bud.
Good for you. I'm there all the time.
Yeah, I just think that it's funny how there's a correlation between depression and the amount of self-help books, and I think they fuel each other, just like instruction books, fuel bad golf swings, right? So I think it's all based on mood and then recognizing where you're at. So if I'm in a bad mood and I get to security at the airport, my mind is going to make it so much worse. And if I'm in a good mood, I don't even really realize I'm in security. So what I've come to understand is that based on the mood I'm in, which is going to generate my state of mind, my perception of what I'm seeing is a function of where I'm at. So people aren't seeing things for the way things are. People are seeing things for the way they are. And from a high state of consciousness, I have all the access I need to empathy and love and forgiveness. And from a low state, I have access to apathy and guilt and shame and all that. So in a good mood, walk past a homeless guy, here's $10. In a bad mood, walk past a homeless guy, you say, get a fucking job. And the thing is that guy's just sitting there. So he's not really technically done anything. So my wife can be annoying and charming in the same day, but you would sit in the corner and say, Sean, she was being the same dude. It was you. Right. And so is recognizing that pretty much 99% of the time when you have a problem, if you can look inward enough, you'll see that it's your problem. It's not what's going on out there. So I think we are Martin Scorsese. I think we're George Lucas. I think we're Steven Spielberg. And I think our mind is a film roll and we are just projecting the world around us nonstop. So when you realize that, the reason I say I don't really have that many bad days is one, I have perspective. So I've been through some shitty things in my life and some very difficult things in my life. So once you go through those things, your new bad day is like a pinprick versus like a bullet wound. So that's important, right? So the ability to go through shit so you can withstand what comes after that. So like when we work out, right? The muscle tears, it can repairs because the brain thinks I'm probably going to do that tomorrow. So I'm going to need to repair this muscle so it comes back stronger. It's the same thing, man. You got to tear your soul up too in order to build it back stronger. And I just think that people are so careful from being hurt and all that they're never really going to, if you don't really know what true pain feels like, you'll never really know what joy is when it hits you. And for everything I've been through, if 80% of the time is me going through things and 20% is joy, it's worth it because that joy is just gives you purpose and reason for wanting to continue on. And I just think that it's just hard for me to have a bad day because I know I'm the author of it.